it doesn't make me feel good. So anything that doesn't make me feel good, whether it be relationships, alcohol, people, whatever it is, if it doesn't make me feel good and I have a bit of an off feeling in my body or my stomach, I'm just like, I don't have time for that anymore. I'm not doing that.
Building a business is tough and doing it alone even tougher. Welcome to She Talks, your go-to podcast for raw, relatable and ridiculously useful business advice. I'm Lisa Jones and I'm both a mum and a serial entrepreneur, and I'm here to help share real stories and proven strategies to help you scale up your business. Let's do this together. Can you launch a skincare brand from your kitchen table and turn it into a 25-year certified organic legacy without ever outsourcing production? In this episode, I chat with Mukti, founder of Mukti Organics, an early pioneer of Australia's clean beauty movement and the powerhouse behind one of the country's most trusted certified organic skincare brands. From mixing products by hand in the early 2000s to now overseeing every step of the process in-house, we talk about her best-selling serum that sold out in 8 hours, how she's grown a deeply loyal customer base without chasing trends, and why she wakes up at 4 a.m. to meditate before running R&D, ops, and team. If you're building a product brand that stands the test of time or dreaming of doing business your way, this episode is packed with powerful insights and unfiltered truths. So, Mukti, welcome to the podcast. And I really want to dive in with a bit of a pressing question for a lot of women. We start our businesses for many different reasons. Sometimes it's freedom, chance to be creative. Maybe it's financial. We want to set ourselves up. But I want to know, what made you start Mukti?
So I was working as a skin therapist. I have a background in complementary medicine and alternative therapies. And at the time, I was working in a guest lodge, and we had a lot of stressed out teachers and nurses who would come there for a pamper. It was a pamper package, so they'd have a facial and a massage. And I was using a bit of all sorts of products, and I thought, you know what? It can't be too hard. Maybe I can just make my own products. So that was initially how it started, because I wanted to create something that was organic and natural, but also cosmeceutical, and something that I could create with the ingredients that I wanted to create. So back then there were heritage brands like Halshka and Weleda, and then of course Gelique in its previous iteration. So I was using a few of those products in my treatments, and then I realized that I had a captive audience when I had a client on the table. And I was a single mother, and so I recognized a niche, and I pretty much started experimenting, and that was how it began. And then I went to start taking the products to the Yamundi market. So I just started with a couple of basic formulations. But I also wanted to have my freedom and independence. I've never really been employed, so I always say I'm unemployable. And so I created the brand. That's how it started. It really just started with a few clients and family and acquaintances, and then just grew from there. And then I literally began going around and approaching a lot of health foods and pharmacies and knocking on doors, and then made so many, I always joke, knocked on so many doors that I had to make a hand cream. But back in those days, it was a very, very different landscape to what it is now with starting a business. And it was very, old school. It was just as computers were becoming a household thing. And so it was really quite challenging and a lot slower than what it would be today with a startup, and having access to being able to create a Shopify website, for example, and just quickly get something to market. So also it was back at a time when natural and organic, well, there wasn't really even a certification back then. So I was really forging and being a pioneer, which I think when you're doing that, you're not realizing that you're being a pioneer. It makes me feel like an old person now. But it was uncharted territory, and it was also coming from a place where approaching a traditional cosmetic chemist, they were very unhelpful and It was also quite limited in relation to ingredients as far as natural preservation, robust preservation, shelf life, also finding organic ingredients. So the initial formulations and iterations were fairly rudimentary compared to what we have today, which are all quite sophisticated. So I use a lot of different bioidentical ingredients now in cosmeceuticals and peptides, along with a certified organic base. So staying true to that original intention and origin, and still manufacture and control all the processes in-house, never contract manufactured. So we do everything ourselves, and I'm a bit of a control freak in that regard because I just don't trust the quality and efficacy. And there's something very different about a white labeled product compared to something that's been crafted with purpose and intention. So we still do everything in-house, and we'll continue to do that vertically integrated, which means I have to wear the operations manager hat, but it also means that we can produce quality products that I'm really proud of and that work.
Yeah, I love, there's so many things I want to talk about that you just mentioned, but let's start with the fact that it was around about 2000 you launched, right? So you must be celebrating 25 years this year. And in the skincare industry, that's a really long time. Like, congratulations, firstly. And you're right. I suspect not just the fact that there was no Shopify back then, but the laws governing what you could sell things labeled as would have changed significantly. I think probably the entire landscape, and maybe most humans' appetite for what they put on their skin will have dramatically changed since you first launched. And, you know, I still remember the days when, well, that embarrassingly, my family still use Nivea and, you know, Vaseline and things like this. And I think our knowledge, especially with things like ChatGPT now, is just keeps changing and growing. And I think, my goodness, like, what a journey that you've been on. What's probably been one of the standout pieces for you in the last 25 years about what's shifted with your buyers, like the women who buy from you?
Yes, I think we call it the clean beauty movement, but I'd like to sort of rephrase that as mindful beauty. So one of the things that I have done, and I've collated a lot of information and research for years, and I created the book Truth in Beauty, which I originally published in 2018, and then I rewrote it and revised it and then published it again last year. So Truth in Beauty was about taking those ingredients that were questionable and potentially, you know, nefarious, and really doing the research as far as finding scientific-based evidence that made them, I put them in a category called the A to Z blacklist, the ones that should really be avoided because we don't know the long-term implications. And when you combine lots of different products with lots of different ingredients every single day, not only are you inhaling them, especially with the fine particles, but you're also ingesting them. So one of the ones that I like to really point out to people is anything that has a synthetic smell or fragrance in it, because you are inhaling and ingesting them. And now one of the biggest concerns that we have is endocrine disrupting chemicals, and phthalates are one of those. And phthalates are found in anything that has a fragrance that is not an essential oil. So that's been my big passion project, and really educating people about these long-term compounded effects which are unquantifiable. So it's always best to err on the side of caution. And then in the book, I dive into what you need to look for and how to go about that, just to minimize your risks and exposure on a daily basis, because we are going to use anywhere between 15 to 30 products. I mean, teenagers would easily use 30 products a day, which is incredible. And they're still at such a developmental, reproductive process that they're going through at that age. So there are so many EDCs, endocrine disrupting chemicals, in the environment, let alone what we're putting on our faces and on our skin and on our bodies in enclosed, confined spaces. So this process of education.
By the way, I have a teenager who is obsessed with Sol de Janeiro and sprays herself constantly with all of the fragrance range at home. And it actually really, I'm not sure how to take the TikTok out of the teenager, but I think, oh my gosh, that can't be good for you. And she's spraying it in her room every morning.
Yes, so that's one of the things that I really would like to spend more time on. And I think most mothers are concerned about that. They often buy the book for their teenage daughters because it's full of the evidence-based information. And I think that it's crucial to minimize that sort of exposure. It's very concerning, particularly if they're at that vulnerable age. And also, we are going through a process of an increase in infertility. So understanding and reading ingredient lists that are on the packaging is super important. And I think that's a really key area that I like to focus on. So that's why we have a blacklist of ingredients that we won't ever use. And the majority of our products are certified organic. And that's why we go through that process of certifying them. It's a little bit more time consuming and it makes it more expensive, but I won't substitute quality. And also I feel like that's where people are becoming more educated. They're looking for cleaner products, especially going through hormonal changes and life changes and also pregnancy. That's when people become more concerned about what they're using on themselves and also on their newborns as well.
But talking of newborns for a moment, I had a nappy brand called Eco Originals and we bought out wipes. And I suppose for listeners today, some of them will be frothing over having you on the podcast today from a skincare perspective. But there's many of us women bringing products out that are not traditional skincare brands, but still need to understand this kind of classification information and awareness. And for me, in baby wipes, phenoxyethanol and phthalates are really normal ingredients and fragrances of all kinds. And we're wiping these on our newborn and small children's most private porous skin. And I discovered that baby wipes have no approval process in Australia. There's no regulatory authority that monitors the ingredients in baby wipes. Still today, as far as I understand, it doesn't exist. So we were able to import wipes with any ingredient we needed it or wanted to put in them. And of course, most wipes are made in China. And definitely they need a bit of you there when it comes to some awareness of the kind of chemicals. So we did strip a bunch out, but I still don't know if I got it 100% right. Talking to you now, I realize how important this kind of knowledge for brand founders bringing products out is.
Yes, it's really important in that development phase. I mean, obviously you need to preserve the products and they need to be stable. So that's equally as important, but then it's also important to have those parameters in place. And that's, I think in the book, there's around 51 that I really sort of signaled out and pulled out as the ones that are best to avoid, because there's a lot of research about them that is unfavorable. And again, we want to think about long-term health and the impact of that. And look, the industry isn't regulated. We think that there's certain things that have maxims as far as, let's say, phenoxyethanol, which is a very well used preservative that's kind of taken over parabens, and it's in just about every single product that you would pick up, a mainstream product. And then you think about that, and let's say the maxim is 1%, but you're using multiple products over a period of a day. So that's going to well exceed those limitations. That's where you've got to think about it and start pulling it apart. I think they're my two big ones is preservatives and fragrances and perfumes. So anything that has olfactory membranes are designed to move us away from danger. That's their innate function and purpose. And so if you start to feel unwell or you have an adverse effect to a fragrance, for example, a candle, cleaning products, personal care products, someone else's perfume, for example, then it's your body's way of telling you that something is not right. If you start to feel nauseous or you get a headache or you feel dizzy, it's your body telling you to move away from danger. And then what's happened is that our olfactory senses become dulled down and we can't smell as well as we used to. So someone will put a perfume on that they use every day, for example, but it won't smell as strong to them as it will to someone else. So when they walk into a room or they walk along the street, you can smell this big toxic cloud coming towards you if you're sensitized towards fragrances. So the ones that are sensitized, we're actually the lucky ones because our bodies are working in a way where they are moving us away from that sense of danger.
And I had, was just explaining to you just before we hit record on the potty today, but I had a really bad case about 6 or 7 years ago of, I don't know exactly how they describe it, but I call it periofacial dermatitis or perioral dermatitis.
Perioral, yes.
Perioral dermatitis, which for my beautiful listeners is like tiny little, they look like tiny little pussy pimples, but they're just little pustules. And in particular, all around my mouth and nose and under my eyes. And when it happened, I mean, I'm a little bit vain, so I was pretty horrified, and I tried so many things to get rid of it. And I do believe that was a form of sensitivity from my skin. And I think even this is also indicates around our mouth, even of like some of our internal organs. It's a part of the Chinese, what do they call that? Like the mapping of the internal organs or something. And in the end, I had to cut out a whole stack of products. And even now, you know, I'm definitely Mecca Beauty Loop 4, but there's a bunch of products I know I can't touch. I can't go near Charlotte Tilbury, any of her makeup or skincare, because I almost instantly get these tiny little pustule breakouts. And that, like you said, that's become my sensitive notice immediately within a night of putting on a product. I'll be like, that's just a hard no for me. And I think we maybe don't pay enough attention to this for sure.
Yes, so skin barrier impairment's so common, and dehydration, 97% of us are dehydrated. So we really want to look at feeding the skin barrier with calming ingredients and not over exfoliating and not using too many actives. So paring it right back down using just really hydrating products and ceramides and essential fatty acids, which all come from plants basically. So it's just really simplifying your routine. And then perioral dermatitis is very, very common. The first place to look at and identify would be what you're using to cleanse your skin, because that's going to disrupt the pH. So you want to use something that's not going to be too alkaline, which is pH of the skin sits around, 4 to 7 or at 5.5. And so you want to use products that are pH balanced as well. And you don't want to have a bubble bath on your face. So the first thing, if you use anything that's stinging, immediately stop using it and then really simplify your routine. So you can just go back to almost using something like a very hydrating cleanser and then a serum with niacinamide or hyaluronic acid, for example, and then just a very hydrating moisturizer that's got ceramides or emollients in there. So you just pair everything right back.
My teenager already, the minute she has too much acne or breakout happening, I'm like, pare it back, babe, go right back to basics, just a 3-step twice a day, keep it really clean on the products, and then instantly it bounds back.
Yes, I think sometimes we feel like we need to use a whole lot of products and do all these really complicated routines, but the skin actually doesn't need to be overstimulated. It just needs nurturing.
Oh, that's how I feel. Can I say the same? Can I claim the same? I don't need overstimulating. I just need nurturing, please. I want to talk now a little bit about your choice of manufacturing everything in-house. And I know that will have come at a cost. I know that means you have to definitely would have positives and negatives. You've got control, you've got the ability to produce and try and test a lot more products, but then equally there's a lot of startup and setup costs in new production lines and all of your own facility and staffing it. Tell me, in your very long journey with this, what are some of the things that have definitely, for a skincare brand, made that a winner to stay self-manufacturing?
I think the big thing is being able to pivot. For example, we recently produced a new product in a category that has been a bit understated, which was the Age Defiance body serum. And we had an amazing launch with that. We sold out within 8 hours of launching. And so if we had, for example, gone through a contract manufacturer, we would have been in trouble because we may not have been able to reproduce that. But we were able to go back into production immediately. So that's just a very recent example of how that can work. So, and if you're tied up with a contract manufacturer and you haven't got your forecasting and your projections correct, then you're also going to be at the mercy of their production schedules as well. My COGS, or my cost of goods, are outrageously expensive, which again is one of those reasons why I say I'm unemployable, because you just wouldn't be able to recreate. And I know the products for that same price point. And I know people have taken my formulations to contract manufacturers and said, I want to create something like this. And they're unable to because of the high percentages of actives that I put in there. I just won't compromise on quality, and I just don't really trust. I know that we're using the freshest possible ingredients. A lot of the times with oils and certain ingredients, you have to be very careful of their shelf life because they do oxidize, and you can smell that when you open a product or you keep an oil for too long, for example. They do have a shelf life. And the other thing that we use is the Mirin glass, which helps to preserve and energize the products as well. So again, everything that we do is for a reason as far as sustainability and also I guess I'm a control freak, really, and I have trust issues. That's really an extension of me.
I
Yeah.
honestly think that that is definitely a symbol of really successful women. I think we have to, there's a few things, curiosity and I suppose a real hustle hard mentality, but I think a lot of us are a little bit control freaky because otherwise we give up too much control and then things go pear-shaped and we're not quick to react. And I think you're right. Like what I just heard from you is that self-manufacturing means you're quick to react. And we know so many female founders who get stuck with really long production waits when they go out of stock and they have to wait till the manufacturer can slide them back in again. And often there's shipping delays and that is lost revenue. And so I suppose I think that it sounds like you've chosen the right way to do this because it gives you the product in the control that you're looking for in terms of quality, but also the ability to go into production of things that you know you're running low on. And you probably don't waste stock then because you're monitoring your own inventory levels very carefully.
Yes, I mean, forecasting has been, we're sitting in a very fortunate position at the moment because we've actually had a 40% increase in sales since the beginning of this year. So it's really quite phenomenal. But I also run a very lean machine. So, you know, if that forecasting is out, for example, and we haven't predicted, we might have predicted a 10, 15, 20% growth, not a 40% growth. So then I've got to be comfortable with greater stock holding as well. So it's better to have more finished goods and being able to have that surplus and sell that through. But yes, I think for me, I just can't ever see losing that part of the business. And in saying that, it's definitely a lot more work because we are essentially, when people ask me what I do, I just tell them I'm in manufacturing because essentially that's what I am doing. It just happens to be skincare. So with that, obviously, you know, there's lots of different sides of the business. You've got the administration side, you've got the marketing side, and then you've got the operations side. And every time I step out of the business and I'm not on the floor overseeing everything, we don't tend to experience that same sort of growth. So I am fully back in that position of, I guess I call myself, I've had a demotion from CEO to general manager of operations. And then I have to jump in and, you know, record some content. So it's kind of like multiple, I'm still 25 years later wearing multiple hats. But I guess it's because I still really love what I do and I'm passionate about that. Otherwise I wouldn't. But I feel like, I think, you know, the other really important thing is the recruitment process and making sure that you are really vetting anyone who comes into the business thoroughly, because you can waste so much time and energy on having the wrong people in your business that aren't on the same page as you. And being a business owner now, it's become, you have very little rights as an employer. And there's a lot of people that do have other agendas when they come into your business. And I'm a very trusting person. I usually think that people are coming from the right place, and I've been burnt multiple times and my radar is highly tuned now. But I also realized too that whatever is going on in my personal life or whatever I haven't dealt with, I'm energetically going to create or attract that same thing into my business. So I've been doing a lot of deep work on myself in the past 12 months, and that's really shifted again what's going on in the business because it's an extension of me. It's like being in a relationship. You can't escape from yourself and what you're putting out there into the environment. So you have to do the work on yourself because it's only going to reflect in the health of your personal relationships and also your business relationships. It always has to come back to the self, which can be brutal. So you have to do that work. You have to do that work because you're dealing with people and you want to make work a nice place to come to. You know, make sure that everyone is on the same page. And so the cultural aspect of it has to be really important and needs to be an extension of what your values are and what your mission is. And so that recruitment process, I mean, take it slowly, go through it thoroughly, really find out if that person is a match, and also have that 6-month trial period where it's like, you know, if it gets to the end of 6 months and it's not the right vibe for both parties, then I think it's really important to part ways rather than keeping people in there, you know, if they're not on the same page as you.
Let me guess, you've built a successful brand, but now you're feeling stretched, stuck, and unsure how to scale to the next level. I see it all the time. The truth is, what got you here won't get you there. That's where SheCom's Scale Mastermind program comes in. We've helped so many women grow from 6 to multiple 6 and even 7 figures without sacrificing their sanity. If you're ready for real strategic support and to be surrounded by women who truly get it, come join us. You don't have to figure this out alone. Head to shecom.co and take that next step. We have a saying here at SheCom, hire slow, fire fast. I couldn't agree more with everything you just said. And I think for our listeners, I really want to, this is probably a little bit slightly to the side of what we normally talk about on the potty, but I'm a woo-woo at heart kind of girl, and I really want to talk about this with you, is around the energetic relationship between our business and ourselves. And I 1000% agree with you, Mukti, around our business is always a mirror or a reflection of how we are emotionally. And I think for those of us that carry around all the baggage on our shoulders of undealt with childhood trauma and all of the baggage that we accidentally stow on our shoulders through our life, our business is just going to keep reflecting that back at us if we don't go and deal with it. And I would love to know, like, you obviously recognize this and you said you've done lots of work. Like, tell us, what does that work look like? How do you identify how to move this stuff so that the business is able to lift up to another revenue level or another happiness level or another place that makes you feel good about it?
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, and I don't think it's woo-woo. I've just worked out at this mature stage of my life now what I need to do, and I do carve out that time for myself. So I start my practices at an ungodly hour when it's still dark outside. I'm a Vedic meditation practitioner, so I do my Vedic practices, which includes doing some mantras and chakras, and then I do a round, what's called a round, which is a series of postures, and then I go into a meditation for 20 minutes. So all of that takes about an hour and a half first thing in the morning. I don't have young children anymore, so I can carve that time out. And then I also like to take the time out so that's the daily practice. And then I also have been working with someone on my past traumas, particularly this last 6 months. I thought I'd dealt with a lot of things. We don't have the space to go into it in a big way, so I'll just quickly go through that. But just a lot of trauma as a child that I needed to still deal with, and I didn't realize there was still more. It isn't just like, oh, not this again. I'm done with this, and it's just like, oh, isn't it just a story? But it's still there on a cellular level. So I went away to do a retreat in India at the end of last year, and then I spoke to the person running the retreat and I approached them, and they were like, yeah, you are about to crack, lady. You are a ticking time bomb, and you can't see that within yourself. So I carved out the time to do the work, and I pretty much fast tracked it but I've just recently, in the past 2 to 3 months prior, I was super angry, and I had to work through that, and I didn't realize how angry I was and how suppressed all of that was. But yeah, I think it's so important to carve out the time to do the work and have those practices that support you in managing your emotional well-being. And so for me, that my spiritual path and what I do to create that foundation is paramount to how I walk in the world. And I can't be of benefit or use to others unless I'm solid within myself. And so that then becomes an extension, as we spoke about. So yeah, I'm seeing the results of what I'm doing through what's happening in my daily life. Yeah. So to me, it's a non-negotiable. I meditate twice a day. I won't ever not do that because it keeps me, I'm a better human being and I'm more balanced. And look, I'm still figuring things out. I'm not perfect by any means. I still have my faults, but I have greater awareness. And I think it's just about fine tuning that. And that's the process of life, and what are we doing and why are we doing it? And how is this impacting or helping others? We're at a critical time in humanity right now. So I think how we're spending our time and what we're doing on a daily basis at a micro level as well as a macro level needs to be identified and contemplated.
Yeah, I resonate with that deeply. And I think, I don't meditate every day, but I bring consciousness to things that show up around me. And I've done a lot of therapy to let go of stuff and a lot of screaming into pillows and a lot of dancing it out kind of in my adult life to let go of a lot of trauma from when I was younger. And I think it definitely shows up in my business. I look for synchronicity and I look for the gifts. And I was actually on socials doing my 4 a.m. You might meditate. I do the doom scroll at 4 a.m. in the lounge room with a cup of tea, which is possibly not healthy, but I do enjoy it. It's the only time of day that I've got to myself where I can actually scroll. And I was having a look this morning and a lovely lady I know moved, she's Australian, and she moved to the US and fell in love and got married, and they were both working hard and raising his children. And he had a massive stroke about 8 months ago, and he can't talk still, and he's learning to walk again. And the journey for her will be years and years of endless rehabilitation. And she did this beautiful post this morning, and it was reminding all of us that we just don't know what tomorrow holds. And in hindsight, they worried about all the wrong things for the last, 5 or so years that they were in a relationship and hustled every day, and both were doing a second degree and all this busyness that we fill our lives with. And I really felt quite profoundly when I read that this morning, and I feel it really resonates alongside what you've just shared, which is that I feel we have an obligation as business founders to both build the business, but equally not get distracted constantly in the next shiny thing, which I think, I don't know if, Mukti, that's your experience as well. It is for me, is that I'm very bad at stopping to smell the roses. And in fact, we get one win and we're just looking straight for the next one. We're not celebratory, and I don't slow down. And I actually shared with you earlier that I'm due to go on holidays shortly, and I'm definitely concerned that I have an inability to turn off. I don't have ADHD. I've done the test. I don't have a lot of the symptoms, but I'm addicted to my business, and the addiction is real, and the addiction to be constantly on. And that's deeply wearing on our nervous systems. And I'm seeing a GP at the moment to try and help me with the concept of, don't let me burn out. Like, what do I need to do right now as a female that knows that she's in burnout mode to balance myself? I mean, I'm even microdosing magic mushrooms at the moment and cannabis oil, just trying to round out my personal regime to find the things I need. Probably I should just work less. I'm thinking as I say it out loud, I'm an idiot. I just need to actually work less, but I'm somewhat addicted. Like, has that shown up for you as well?
Just what you were saying before, I just wanted to address that. So the de-stressing is really important. And what my advice to you would be, in particular, would be to not get up and look at the phone straight away and use that time to meditate. That would be my holistic advice to you, because all that's doing is creating more stress, and that's how you're starting your day. Whereas if you start it from a place of coming from within and groundedness, I mean, just give it a try for, like, do it tomorrow, do it the next day, or do it when you're on holidays, and get into that routine, because that's an addiction as well. And everything will go on. Like, if you think about, if you were taken out of the equation tomorrow, life will go on and people will go on and everything will continue. But, and at the end of the day, none of it, we can't take any of it with us. So this obsession with money, and this obsession with materialism, and this obsession with comparing ourselves to other people, none of that is important at the time of death. So we have to always fast forward to that and maybe keep that in mind as a daily practice, what's important here. So to me, I won't touch my phone first thing in the morning. I very rarely go on Instagram these days. It doesn't make me feel good. So anything that doesn't make me feel good, whether it be relationships, alcohol, people, whatever it is, if it doesn't make me feel good and I have a bit of an off feeling in my body or my stomach, I'm just like, I don't have time for that anymore. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm honoring myself and putting myself first. And I don't think I answered your question.
No, but actually, now that you've said that, I want to know, like, for a newbie like me, I mean, I have meditated. I used to live in Byron. I did a lot of meditation, but I haven't done it for so long. Where does a newbie go to, like, meditate at 4 a.m.? What do I need to do?
Yeah, so for me, I found a Vedic meditation practitioner, and how VM works is you work on an anchor, and that anchor is a mantra, and then you get given that by the practitioner, and then they take you through a series of, it's usually, I believe it's 3 days, and you do it twice a day with that practitioner so that you can really ground in the practice, and you just keep coming back to the mantra. It's quite a simple process, and then that's where you would start and begin. So you would look for a Vedic meditation practitioner. There's 3 down here that are in this area. There's Johnny Pollard, there's Tiffany Jackson, there's Gary Goro, but you need to find the person that is the teacher for you too. So I would check out any of those 3 and just find out who resonates with you. The person I've been doing a lot of work with lately is Johnny, and Johnny was behind One Giant Mind. He started that app, and that's also another great place to start, is with an app if you can't find the time for a teacher. So One Giant Mind is a really great, which is where I started years ago when I first began my meditation practice, and you can just get it on your phone and away you go.
Currently writing it down.
Yeah, and One Giant Mind.
What we are doing, one thing I can tell you, because I agree with you, and I think that our listeners right now, I would almost guarantee you that 99.8% of our listeners are not meditating, because we're all busy women building businesses. But here at SheCon, we actually just are about to launch a fortnightly evening meditation for our clients in our programs. And it is an 8 p.m. meditation in a quiet room in your home. And it's around, adrenaline, burnout, and then also manifestation and abundance in our businesses, specifically Shopify businesses. So I'm feeling a bit proud at the moment that we're actually specifically creating a meditation series that will be live, and then we'll be recording them and putting them into our client portals, because I think even for a lot of women, the idea of Vedic meditation might feel needing to get a coach or somebody to support them through even learning this could feel burdensome, somewhat like another item on the to-do list. But you're right, like there's a number of apps, including One Giant Mind, that can allow you to access guided meditation straight away. So we just need to make it as easy as we can find it sometimes. And I am going to promise you that tomorrow morning when I wake at 4 a.m., which I do almost every day, sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 5, and like maybe twice a year at 6, I'm going to go meditate, because I am with you. I actually need it. And I feel the addiction feeds the addiction. And the more I'm stimulated mentally, the more it just stimulates more need for more stimulation. And I agree with you. You've got to have a circuit breaker, right? I suspect the meditation every morning acts as a circuit breaker. Is that how you would describe it?
Yes. So your eyes closed experience enhances your eyes open experience. And that's the basis of it. It's really that simple. And it's just as you said, it is an addiction. This addiction to the cortisol, it's the addiction to having to do things. But it's like, well, what is all this busyness about? So we need to look at how to de-stress that out of our lives. And sometimes we're running away from things, so that keeps us busy and we don't want to face things. So all of it ties in together. So it's like, okay, I need to take this time out for me, because aside from everything else, it's the most important thing. And if you consider how quickly it feels like time is moving, particularly, I mean, I can't believe it's already June. I think a lot of us, this year in particular, it is like time is speeding up. So taking that time out twice a day, 20 minutes a day, morning and evening, it carves out that time, and it does help time slow down a little bit more, because you are making time for yourself.
And we have, I suppose, somewhat gone way off topic here, but this has probably been one of the more interesting conversations I've had in a while. And I think it's not talked about enough. So thank you for sharing those really valuable pieces with us. I'd steer it back for our last couple of questions around, I'd love to know a little bit more about challenges in building Mukti, the brand, because I know that you've had a couple of rough moments in the last 25 years. And I wanted to just ask, in those 2 moments in particular, I know you shared with the team before the podcast, there was some occasions that probably tested your resilience with continuing to grow the brand. Tell us about those and what happened.
I didn't ever really have the opportunity for a contingency plan. So I didn't have a plan B. I didn't have a parent's place or couch or somewhere where I could go to, and if it failed. So for me, failure was not an option. So even when those moments came up when I almost lost the brand on a couple of occasions, I and I've only borrowed money twice. I've borrowed 2 lots of $50,000 and I paid them back immediately as quickly as I could when things got tough. And that was just to get me out of that situation. But there was no other option, so I just kept pushing through. There was a time too when, I had to put a whole lot of staff off and then be the person answering the phone and then the person making the product and the person packing the parcels. And so there were those moments where I had to go back to ground zero. But I think they're also very humbling experiences. I think for me, there just wasn't an option. So that's why I kept pushing through. And I'm very determined. And so, no, I just didn't ever accept no as an answer. It makes you resilient, but also very creative. And as I said, it was a very different landscape back then. You couldn't just go online and have a sale or a flash sale. So, yeah, I think you just keep pushing through if you can at all costs. For me, I didn't have a wealthy husband or someone else who was bringing in an income. I had to provide.
God damn it, where do they live? I want to find one of them too.
Yeah, that was.
By the way, I think those are quintessential features of a woman in business, is that you have to fire on all cylinders and never have a backup plan, and always understand that when your back is against the wall, which it has been for me so many times, I can relate, that there's only one way forward, and that's never giving up. Like, I have a never, ever, ever, ever give up kind of attitude. I can find my way out of just about anything. And I think that those of us that have continued to grow businesses over time, like, it's got to be a feature of us. It's a skill that we've learned to harness. And I sometimes agree with you from the sense of, I do have parents whose couch I can crash on, and I have actually had to do it a couple of times, but they don't understand building businesses. And I think they once lent us $35,000 when our back was against a wall at one point. But other than that, which we paid back with interest, I don't have parents who have given me a silver spoon. And I perhaps think it's a wonderful lesson for us in life, and maybe we're the richer ones because we actually have had to learn how to forge our way through it. And, so much adversity. I always say adversity breeds strength. Every time I try and teach my 14-year-old daughter that when we get adversity, don't see it as something we have to run away from. See it as something we rise up to, because we learn lessons from that teach us the next time we face adversity, we're actually smarter and cleverer and more resilient than we realize we are. And as raising a teenager is so challenging, as I know you've raised your own, and she sometimes says, I don't like these girls at school, Mom. I'd like to leave school and, study virtually. And then I think, well, babe, they're just going to show up in your workplace or in your apartment block. You can't hide from adversity or challenges or dickheads in life. They're going to appear somewhere around you. So the best thing to do is to face it head on and see exactly what's happening and power through it, and then, give yourself a chance to heal afterwards. So I agree with you. It sounds like we probably have a lot of similar characteristics that have graced both of our lives and perhaps have not made it easy, but who'd choose easy?
Yeah, I think you used the word before, hustle. You just learn to be a really good hustler, like make it happen. And it does make you creative. You have to, especially when you bootstrap, there's not a startup amount of capital there. It's like, okay, I'm just going to have to make this work. And you learn through experience,
You do. Well, the end of our podcast every week, we ask 5 fast questions. Mukti, I would love to ask these questions of you. They're just a snap answer. First thing that comes in your mind. What is one word to describe you that would surprise people?
I knew these were going to be hard. I'm really silly. Yeah, I like being silly.
I love that. Is that a counterbalance, do you think, to the seriousness of the other parts of life? Does it like a redistribution of the scales?
Yeah, I think I can be very serious and very focused, and then I can come out and be really silly. And I like that part of me, that humorous part of me. I like making people laugh. Yeah.
I love that. What's one word that you would use to describe running a business?
Resilience.
What's the first thing you do when you feel stuck?
I will either meditate or I will go for a walk by myself for 20 minutes to half an hour just to give myself some space.
I love that. I think I mightn't meditate, but I move every day on the beach at dawn, and that's my moving meditation. I can't underestimate how important being in nature and not solo, like not talking, but just seeing infinity around us. And I often, when things are so overwhelming and in our worlds, we have this like rapid fire, as you said, you know, the way that things can move in our businesses now is so quick. I sometimes look at a tree and I think, wow, that tree is slow to grow and it trusts that the sunlight's always coming from above. And yes, on rainy days, it hollows in and withdraws a little, and it knows that the sun will come out again and dry it out the next day. And it doesn't try and be a palm tree when it's a jacaranda. It just is a jacaranda, and it probably doesn't even have imposter syndrome or look jealous. And I think sometimes that's such a nice reminder when we go into nature.
Absolutely. And don't take your phone.
Damn it. I knew you were going to give me a lesson in there somewhere.
Yeah, do not take your phone on those walks. It does not belong. Also, being outside in nature, make sure you don't wear sunglasses and go barefoot. They're my 3. No phone, no sunglasses, no shoes.
Connect to the earth and let the sunlight into our eyeballs.
Yeah.
What's a brand you're obsessed with?
It's all free. I'm obsessed with Rode that just sold for $1 billion.
Right.
I find that quite incredible. So I'm just having a look into that at the moment. Imagine all the good you could do with that much money.
I know. I wonder if they will. And what's the biggest business lesson that you've learned in your 25 years with Mukti in one sentence, if you can?
One sentence. I think what you said earlier was slow to hire, quick to fire, or that you can't fire anyone anymore. So very slow to hire is the biggest advice. The people that you have in your business are crucial to the health of your business, and they can either help you move forward or they can set you right back. So very, very take that process, the recruitment process, slowly.
I love that. And it's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast today, talking things a little different to what we normally talk about here at She Talks. Now, listeners, if you loved this episode today, whether you're on Apple or Spotify, make sure you hit that follow button so you can be notified when we drop the next episode of She Talks. And don't forget to slide into my DMs over at LisaJones_co, because I would love to know what you loved about this podcast today, what you would like me to include on a future podcast, and maybe someone you're crushing on that I can go and get as my next guest. Thanks very much for joining me today. And until next week, have a wonderful week ahead. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of She Talks. I hope today's conversation sparked ideas, gave you strategies you can put into action, and reminded you that you're never alone on this journey. If you loved this episode, head over to shecom.co for today's show notes, exclusive freebies, and special offers from our sponsors. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe so you never miss a future episode. Until next time, keep showing up, keep building, and most importantly, keep talking.